You're listening to Bigfoot Society, and I'm Jeremiah Byron. In this show, we go beyond the campfire stories to bring you firsthand encounters from people who say they've seen something impossible, from backwoods trails and remote mountain haulers to quiet farms and crowded highways. The stories come from everywhere, and each one leaves us with more questions than answers. These are the voices of the people who've lived it, so settle in, because today you'll hear another account that just might change the way you see the woods forever. So stay with us. All right, Bigfoot Society, we've got the privilege of talking to JD today. JD is a listener of the show and a Sasquatch enthusiast from Oregon. We got connected, and he's got some interesting things to share. Sounds like over there on the coastal side of Oregon. So welcome to the show, JD. How are you doing today?
I'm great, Jeremiah. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. It sounds like we are headed to a new part of the state that I don't think has come up on the show before. I have a sightings map that is on BigfootSocietyPodcast.com, so listeners can follow along with that. And I don't see any marks in that area yet. So can you tell us a little bit about that area that we're headed to today?
Yes. The area I will be speaking of is in the northern area of the Oregon coast. It's south of Cannon Beach and south of Seaside, which are large tourist attractions to the area. And it really isn't, it's an unincorporated area, and at least it used to be. I haven't been there in years, but it just has some of the most beautiful and remote feeling coastline of the Oregon coast I've ever been to. I grew up in the central Oregon coast, and just east of the actual beach, in the logging community where, I would play in the woods and, grew up camping and was very familiar with being outdoors. Was never a hunter, was never that, robust or virile perhaps, but loved, being outside and being in nature. And that area of the beach is beautiful. It's absolutely beautiful. Anyway, I discovered Arch Cape. It's a very sparsely, at least at the time, a very sparsely populated area with a few, bungalows or cabins and maybe some luxury houses. I think there's a resort there. But other than that, it's pretty much, you've got Highway 101, the coastline, and then you have essentially forest that goes into the Cascade Range. So it feels, very much Oregon, very like wild and green and lovely and serene, usually. Anyway, as I said, as I got older, I rediscovered camping when I got in my 30s. That's when my interest in the Bigfoot phenomena was kind of reignited. Growing up, I remember, I'm of the age, I remember seeing Andre the Giant and Sasquatch and the $16 Man, and of course Leonard Nimoy with, In Search of, Legend of Boggy Creek, blah, 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 all that. But again, I kind of remained enthusiastic, but very skeptical about it. Yet there's always a part of my head that I thought, oh, wouldn't that be fun? And my brother and I, when we were very young, when we were in the woods, we'd go, hunting and stuff, and it was, pretty innocent. All right, so fast forward, mid-30s, I got re into camping and the outdoors. And I found Arch Cape as a little kind of a paradise. It's remote, but it's very close to touristy stuff. So if you needed, a store or, medicine or something, things were accessible. And I believe the area I'm speaking of specifically is Arcadia Beach, between Arcadia and Hug Point, which again are south of Cannon Beach. And I was there just kind of scouting out areas to go. And the first time I went down, I think it's Arcadia. I believe that's correct. You pull into the parking lot, and it's just kind of, your average. It's beautiful beach line. It's flat. It's a very short distance between the parking lot and the beach itself. And it's honestly just kind of like any beach line. But if you hike north or south, maybe a quarter of a mile, there are these little capes. And in these capes, with the tide's out, there are these little spots that are just kind of hidden gems, particularly the one south. And I remember thinking, oh, I want I want to come down here with, somebody on vacation. This would be really fun. Leading into the incident, I booked, there's a little bungalow right off the highway, not on the beach, in Orange Cape, that I booked, I think, 4 or 5 days at. And I brought a friend down, and we got there, and it was lovely. We went, I showed him the beaches, and, we were having some fun. Let's see. The first incident is we went down. I said, "Oh, there's a secret spot. When the tide is out, you can get around this cape, and there's this little cove." And I think that cove is I believe it's just north of what is known as Hud Point. I'm not positive about that, but I believe that to be correct. And we hiked down there, and ironically, it did not feel this. It's like this little kind of like nook where when the tide's out, it's just these cliffs that are mossed, and there's the rocky formage adorning the coast. It just feels extremely remote, extremely serene, and very much cut off from civilization. You can't hit the highway. There are no telephone lines. It just feels very remote, even though it's really not in proximity that far away from stuff. Anyway, we went down, and there were all these rock formations, all these piles of rocks piled up, some of them big. And it didn't seem, I wasn't thinking anything, odd about it. It's funny because there were no footprints. Again, when the tide's up high, you can't really access that point of the cape. But when it's low, you can. And usually you see, I would assume when I first saw it, footprints or, dog prints or, something. There was nothing there except these rock formations and huge divots in the sand that did not look like footprints. And I'm not saying they were, but these big and soft sand kind of divots. And it just seemed odd. But my friend and I sat there, and it was cool. I had a sandwich or something, and nothing to really note. I believe the next evening, the bungalow we were staying at was not on the beach itself, but was maybe a 5-minute walk down to it. We went down, we had a bonfire, just a small, quaint bonfire, and just kind of were enjoying the coastline. And we were drinking some wine, and my friend went back to the bungalow, and I wanted to stay, and I actually fell asleep. Now, the odd point of this is that I don't think I was asleep very long, and it wasn't like a deep sleep. It was like I just kind of nodded off. And somebody who was bipedal, I assume it was a human, came jogging past me extremely fast and woke me up. I was not dead asleep, but I was just kind of, when you nod off, like if you're on the bus or on the airplane or something. And I was overwhelmed by how embarrassed I was because I looked like a hobo. I'm very, half drunk asleep on the beach. But then I thought it was night out at that point. Like, who's jogging on the beach? And I just had a glimpse of just something dark, and it just zoomed past me. And again, this isn't soft sand. This is not wet sand. This is where there's a bit of an embankment where I was able to kind of, build a small fire and kind of cozy up against it, so to speak. So, it didn't seem that weird in that moment. I was just embarrassed because I thought, oh, put the fire out, behave and, go to bed. That was my thought at the moment. Okay. So the next day, this is the incident that really has stricken me over the years, is I woke up and my friend, who at the time, we're not friends anymore, but at the time I know was using a lot of marijuana and alcohol, was very intoxicated when I woke up. And I was very irritated because I thought, I just want to get some coffee. I want to go for a jog or do something. And they wanted to go down to the beach. So I drove us up to, again, I believe it's Arcadia. I think that's the parking place that we found. That's a beach entry point. And we went in and we hiked versus south, where you would find the little nook that I spoke of earlier. If you went north, there's another cape. It's much less obtrusive. You can access it anytime. But once you kind of cross that, and the reason I say that is the main beach itself can be very populated. For families go, there's a lot of activity, a lot of kids. If you head north or south, and again, we're talking maybe a quarter of a mile, not a huge walk, but it's much more remote. And my friend was driving me nuts and wanted to go play down, wade in the water and goof around. And I said, go. I brought a book and a beach towel. I'm going to sit up here by the tree line, by the greenery, and just like be away from your trunk and read and just kind of like chill out. So I sat there and was reading. And at some point, and it had been maybe 30, 40 minutes, my entire body was stricken. I'm a hairy guy, and I swear every hair in my body stood on end. And it's very hard to articulate, but I was so stricken with this intense fear I've never felt in my life. And something, or somehow, or, a hallucination of my own, I don't know, said in my brain, things here will hurt you. I will hurt you. You must leave. You must leave now. And it wasn't words. I don't know exactly how to, again, explain it, but it was just the most fearful moment I think I've had in my entire life. And I looked up into the greenery, which is, 2 feet in front of me. I didn't see anything. I did not smell anything. There was no movement that I was able to detect. I was being watched or preyed upon or something. It was just this terribly, terribly overwhelming feeling of fear, and that I have to get out of here right now. And I thought that, and I started to gather, again, that sensation in my head was like, you must leave right now. Get out. Go right now. Go right now. It wasn't words, but it was a very powerful sensation. And so I kind of gathered my book. I didn't have anything with me but, t-shirt, shorts, my towel, and a book. And I went down to get my goofed up friend. And we kind of skirted off the beach. And once we got back to the public area of the beach, which is, again, a little bit south of there, it was like a button switched and all that anxiety completely shut off. I've never felt that way in my life. I have bungee jumped. I've skydiving a few times. I camped by myself. I've been in the woods. Like I've had moments where I'm like, oh, that's a little freaky or exciting. But this was different. This was like terrifying. And I really, again, though, I didn't think anything about Bigfoot. I thought, oh, maybe it's a cougar, or maybe there's a black bear, or something, something indigenous that is causing it. Except it was still in my brain. Anyway, moving on. So those are the 3 things that personally involve me. I live in Portland, Oregon, and at the time I was bartending at a neighborhood bar. And maybe a month later, one of my regulars, who I saw several times a week, came in, and he's a contractor and does remodeling, and I think his specialty is tile work. I will not mention his name, but we had just opened the bar up, and he was a little early, and he came and said, "Hey, baby, can I just grab a quick beer? I'm just got back and close, and I had a really weird time there." And I said, "Yeah, of course." And I said, what's going on, man? Are you cool? And he said, "Well, I just had this weird experience. My brother bought this bungalow, just this place called Arch Cape, and I was there doing some drywall and some tile work, and I only had, the night to be there, so I had fans and lights set up so I could kind of finish the work." And he said, "I don't know." I thought they were kids, but somebody whistled at me, and then somebody threw one of my big industrial fans off to the side, and then kept turning my lights in a different direction. And I'm like, "Well, what do you mean? Were there kids?" Or he said, "Well, I don't know. I went out. I was pissed off, and I went out to give him peace of my mind, but there was no one there. And I came in and set everything back, and then the lights got moved again." And he said, I think there's pardon my word, an effing ghost down there, and this is like a blue collar, very non woo woo guy. And it's funny because I thought I didn't associate it first. I thought, well, I said, don't enjoy your beer, don't sweat it. I'm sure it's nothing. And then I started thinking about getting scared off the beach, and then those other incidents, and I thought, Well, at the time, I was also watching online. There wasn't, this is back again, the year is probably 2006, 2007, that area. I was following the BFRO and Oregon Bigfoot Society online. And it was more for entertainment, in all honesty. But I don't remember, it was one of those two, I believe, that were doing a private investigation in that area around the same time. It wasn't when I was there, but it was within a few months. And I thought, did I have a Bigfoot encounter? Because it certainly, I mean, there's a lot of, to me, that seemed like a lot of coincidences that fell into that realm, or that dynamic, rather, of that period of time. So I really didn't think too much of it. Moving on, still camping, one of my favorite camping spots is an area in the Gifford Pinchot Forest just outside of Washougal in the Washington side of the Columbia by I believe it's the Lewis River. And outside of a small town of Yakult, Washington. And nothing happened there. I didn't have any incidents there, but beautiful and very remote. But then I started listening to, at that point in time, the Sasquatch Chronicles. And I believe that the webmaster of that, West, I think it was he and his brother had an incident, and it was right in that vicinity. And then upon further research, I found that Yakult actually is Native American for evil spirit of the forest. And so all these things kind of made me freak out about, because I used to camp by myself a lot and do all this stuff. It just, all these things started thinking, is this around me all the time? And I just haven't really been privy to it, or not, astute enough to be alerted to it. Anyway, moving on, as work became more intense, my lust for camping and all that kind of diminished because I didn't have time. But I did wait one more venture down to Arch Cape, only because it really is beautiful. Different friend brought down and said, "Oh, you've got to see this beach." Unfortunately, when we got to the coast, the weather wasn't very nice, which it often is not. And I got out of the car and we started to go down to that, again, I believe it's Arcadia, that beach area. And I just thought, I don't want to be here. It was something about that experience I had the time before that completely freaked me out to go back again. And I will probably never be back again. Anywho, those are my accounts.
That's some extremely interesting stuff, JD. I mean, as I said before, nothing has ever come up from that area, but just if you combine everything together, there's some weird stuff.
Well, exactly. That's the thing is, and honestly, Jeremiah, it was listening to your podcast, and there's a few other select others I like, just let people speak of their experiences. Because mine was not visual. Again, I didn't see anything. I didn't smell anything. There were some things that seemed a little, like the divots in the sand by the stacked rocks. But I mean, that could be anything. It's loose sand. They did not look like footprints, but they were big, whatever they were. But again, as an enthusiast, I didn't think Bigfoot at all. I just thought, I don't know. I didn't think anything, I guess.
Did your contractor friend, what did they describe what kind of whistle it was?
They said it sounded like I think he thought it was some teenagers with him, pardon my French again.
Right.
But, I don't think he's not, this is a very blue collar gentleman who's not, prone to fantastic, woo-woo supernatural stuff, I would think. But he was shook up. He was very, very shook up. And it was amusing to me. And I did not mention to him my experience because I thought, well, he will just think I'm goofy as well. And I don't want to make him feel more awkward, as a bartender. But it really stuck in my head because I thought, well, I had some weird experiences there. And I don't know exactly where his brother's house was or the bungalow was, but it sounds like it's right in that same. Arch Cape is not, it's like not really a town, it's just an area. And it's really forested, especially he was, to what I understand, that bungalow was on the east side of 101. So that is pretty much just forest. Intermittent houses or developments in that region. And then again, you go right back into the Cascade Range. So I don't know.
What year was this again that your things happened?
Well, it's been a while, but I believe it's between, I think it's 2007, 2008.
Okay. Gotcha. Did you ever do any research to see if other people on the internet anywhere had experiences close to this area? I know you kind of mentioned the BFRO or the Oregon Bigfoot.
I didn't, because I didn't associate it as being Bigfoot necessarily. It was just odd. I thought maybe, when I got scared off the beach, I thought maybe it was a bear, maybe it was a cougar. But again, there was just something different about it because it was in my brain. It was like something was speaking to my brain. I don't know how else to say it. And it was terrifying. I mean, it was really, when I don't remember if, I believe it's one of those two sites. We're doing an investigation that's private in that area. I've done research since. I don't think they've had any reports in that area of Bigfoot, to my knowledge. But I do know that the coastal range has had accounts. And again, growing up in the coast, even though I grew up in the central coast, which is much south of there, you wouldn't talk about things like that. My father didn't hunt. My family didn't hunt. He fished a lot. And we, like I said, kind of grew up playing in the woods, but you didn't talk about it. I mean, everyone was aware of it. It was the coast. It was, the 70s, 80s when I grew up there. It was very apparent in lore, but no one discussed it. I mean, that was just, you'd look like an idiot if you did. And, thus, I guess my reluctance to even comment on some of these moments, because they could easily be explained away individually. But collectively, I feel like, I don't know. There's something that just in my gut feels like, I think there's something, that was something going on at that moment. And if you've been there at all, if you've been to that area, it is, at least at the time, it is gorgeous, but it is very remote. Even though you're close to some small town tourist attractions, generally speaking, it's quite wild, and I don't know. It just kind of, I feel like also there was a report I read from, I think it was in Gerhardt, which is just south of the Washington border and probably maybe 20 miles north of that area I'm speaking of, where I feel like I think again it was the BFRO, I'm not positive, where there was somebody out and they saw somebody looking like they were digging for clams, but they were extremely tall. There were some tourists that were just walking the beach at night. And when the thing didn't run, but walked past them and they realized it was huge. So, I don't know. Anyway, that's all I got, Jeremiah.
Yeah, it's interesting stuff, and it helps kind of look into an area that we haven't before. So I want to say thank you so much. When you went back to your home, did anything weird happen after that? You feel like you may have had stuff happen
you mean
at
back
home?
In Portland?
Yeah, after you left from Arch Cape.
No, I mean not. No, I don't believe so. Again, when I started listening to, I kind of went on we'll call it the Sasquatch bypass, where I just wasn't interested in hearing about that stuff for a while. Just I got busy with work and focused on other things. And more recently, I had an injury where I had to end a job, and I've been at home more, and I started listening to your podcast and a few others. And all those memories, though, came back very, very strong, and they were in my dreams a lot. And it was very frightening in the dream. I mean, it was just a reiteration visually or, dreamlike as of what had happened, which, again, I didn't really pay a lot of credence to at the time. Kind of chuckled it off because I thought, oh, wasn't that funny? That sounds kind of Bigfooty. Mm-hmm. And then just as of late, I'm like, I think that was actually something. I think something was going on. I don't know what it was. Also, this is one thing I forgot. And I put this in an even lower category of relevance, but perhaps, of interest is before I fell asleep at the campfire where I heard somebody jog right in front of me. My friend and I earlier, there were all these lights along the coastline. Now, I assume it was some kind of maybe like naval defense or some kind of like airplane maneuver thing. But they were doing all these weird triangular things. And, I don't know. I'm not a UFO fanatic at all, but I did think it was a little odd. But then again, I think that, let's see, where is that? If you go to Astoria, which is, again, not quite on the coast, but in the Bay of the Columbia, which is, again, north of where our tape is, I think there's an army base up there where there was an individual doing a routine that I think he saw 3 individual squatches about. So, I mean, like, all these things seem so unrelated, but when I speak of them together, in my head at least, it seems like there seems to be something somewhat cohesive about it.
Absolutely. It is. It's one of those things where it's just enough to make you think like, wow, I bet other people have definitely experienced stuff in the same area.
Well, that is my thought.
Know?
And, again, growing up the coast, most people that have lived there, at least when I grew up, were, a little salty, but we didn't talk about stuff that was weird. If there was like issues in the household or economical troubles or things, it generally was not discussed. We didn't make that public. And so anything remotely esoteric or, pertaining to anything supernatural / paranormal, would only be scoffed at best. But I don't know. I liked your podcast and I thought, I'll throw this in, and if it sticks, cool. If not, I mean, it's no worry because it's nothing of great substance. But these are things that happened, and I don't know. I'll leave it at that.
Absolutely. And I think you definitely hit on something really important there, that the way I look at it is it's helping you share what you've experienced, but also it's making sure there's a documented record of whatever happened in a certain area, which could in turn help other people too that, maybe have never seen Arch Cape come up on a Bigfoot show. So that's why, I am more than happy to talk to people when they approach about really anywhere. But, JD, I want to say thank you so much for coming on the show, for sharing what you experienced.
Oh, everything. And that commentary is what kind of tipped the kettle in my brain a bit. Because I thought, okay, it's not just me. Because I thought, I'm just being kooky and just, being, threading things together that probably were just stupid. But then with an outside opinion, and then also with that, whoever was doing, again, I don't recall exactly, I think it was VFR, I'm not positive. We're doing an investigation there. That's when I was like, oh, this might be a thing.
Well, JD, thank you so much for coming on the show. Please keep us in mind if you do happen to hear anything else about the area in the future. Feel free to reach out. And thank you so much for chatting today.
Yes, Jeremiah, you have a wonderful day. Good luck with everything.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Bigfoot Society podcast. Every encounter we share reminds us that the world is bigger and stranger than we think, and that the truth is often hiding just beyond the tree line. If you enjoyed this episode, please be sure to subscribe to the channel on YouTube, hit the bell so you don't miss the next episode, and share this with a friend who's into mysteries, monsters, or the unexplained. And if you're listening to us on Spotify or Apple Podcast, please follow the show there and leave us a 5-star positive review, because all that helps more people discover the show. And remember, if you or someone you know has had a Bigfoot sighting, please, I'd love to hear from you. So email me at bigfootsociety@gmail.com and let's start the conversation. If you haven't gotten a chance yet, check out our membership community over at www.bigfootsocietypodcast.com. And that's where you can hear tomorrow's episode today, early and ad-free, and members-only episodes every week. Also, it's a place to connect with other people that are into the Bigfoot subject as much as you are. Thanks again for following along with the Bigfoot Society. Until next time, keep your eyes open, trust your gut, and never stop asking what else might be out there. And see you in the woods.